Dundee was probably the centre of music in Scotland.
The Beatles in particular, through Andy Lothian, great promoter here.
They've all been through Dundee, the Kinks, the Searchers, Led Zeppelin, Robert Plant. You could mention most of the names that are around today, huge names, and they played the Dundee Parliament.
It's a story that hasn't been told properly, and it'd be nice to have it documented, especially with everybody together at one time.
Oh, this is looking good. It's looking good, yeah.
The Beatles, of course. The Beatles. Also, Paul McCartney and Wings were here on the 23rd of September, 1975. He didn't do this one, but maybe the next time he comes he will. See if you remember this one. City, Dundee's got great links with music from the rock and roll era, the Beatles in particular. So, and strong links through Ringer, the band that I played in connection with Liverpool over the last 20 years.
We used to be called the Poor Souls. This is the remains of the Poor Souls.
Mr. McDonald put together all the bands, asked everybody to play, and we're all delighted to do this gig in the Caird Hall, and we hope it's a big success.
Money was involved, so that was the first reason, first and foremost, but after thinking about it for a while, it was worth it actually.
Well, we've known Steve McDonald 3-4 years. We played in Liverpool 3-4 years on the trot in the Cavern with Neil Innes and a couple of others, Pete Best. So Steve gave us a call and here we are. It's great to be here.
I've been playing in bands for 40 years and it's only 3 years ago, it was the first time I ever played in the Caird Hall.
I think Liverpool's got to be the best. I mean, there's something special about the city, and obviously it's where it all began. It's definitely special.
Very exciting in Liverpool. I've done the convention down there a couple of times, and you know, they get people from all over the world. They get Chinese people, they get Americans, and so on and so on. So it's a big, big thing, you know.
Pause here with Diggy. That's a good guy. Let's hear from Mr. Ian Cusick.
I did a single in 1975. It was a thing called Shame, 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 which was one of the first big disco singles. At that time, it became a massive seller across Europe. And that was the starting point for Hamburg for me, you know, I just stayed there. And did about 10 solo albums after that, you know, the course of 20 years. So it really became a second home.
Well, when they first went to Hamburg, I was in the army and I was playing with the Forces band. We met them once or twice, had a few drinks, as you do when you're young, and then we both went our separate ways. That was before, obviously, the full Beatles got together. They were then known as the Beat Boys, I think, or the Beat Brothers. Lennon was there, obviously McCartney. Ringo wasn't in then, there was a previous guy called Stuart Sutcliffe. And then a previous drummer, which I can't, Pete Best, was it, I think? Wasn't the original drummers. Practically grew up with those, youth club sort of thing. All started playing together in the same clubs, pubs, bars. The Black Cat comes to mind. We've all, I think everybody in Liverpool played the Jerry and the Pacemakers, the Big Three, you name it. A lot of those people are still going. I still meet them on my travels, but I don't know. I don't think we'll ever get old. It's just one of those things. It goes on. It goes on, and it's magnificent.
You know some of the people who worked with him, Klaus Vrooman, for example, who did the Revolver, drew the Revolver cover. I know Klaus quite well. But I've always been a fan, just a fan, the same as everybody else.
We'll be doing some Beatles stuff, some other stuff from the 60s, and one or two numbers from people who influenced the Beatles. And particularly a guy who's a great favourite of ours, we do a lot of his stuff, called Delbert McClinton, and he taught John Lennon how to play the Moothie.
First Band is a band that I'm also responsible for their name. I remember when they were very young, they were all in their late teens. I met these four young guys and they played for me. And my mother was with me when I met them. And a week later, she said, "Are you signing up that young band?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "What's their names?" And I had spent all night trying to think of a name for this young band. And I'd said, "Their names, I'm going to call them the Rockets." And she said, "The Rockets," she said, "but they're all poor souls." So the band that you're about to see, the name belongs to my mother, God bless her, we honour her in this story, who named the band the Poor Souls. Now tonight there are only two of the original band, sadly, who are here, but you know them both very well, and you probably know the lead singer as undoubtedly one of the greatest singers the world has ever seen. And one of the sadnesses that I have is that when I was his manager, together we were unable to make Dougie Martin the star that he undoubtedly should have been. So let's hear it please for the Poor Souls.
The stuff that we'll be doing tonight, we did on the original concert, so it's memories again.
Oh, it's going to be mind-blowing.
Well, it's probably pretty relevant that it takes place in Dundee. Dundee's like Liverpool, it's the same sort of thing. We've had great bands over the years, from the 50s right through to now. No age gaps, no nothing. Everybody plays with everybody else, no snobbery, no ageism, no nothing. It's a great place to play in a band.
If Dundee takes off, it could be a good thing every year as well.
Let's hear it for the Flaps. Grant, go ahead. Gordon, Mike. The Junkyard Dogs, let's hear from the guys. Jerry, Donny, John.
Another promoter, a man called Albert Benisi, the late and great Albert Benisi, who ran dances from Wick down to about Aberdeen. I ran dances from Stonehaven down to Fife, and the third promoter was a chap called Duncan McKinnon, who ran dances from Edinburgh down to the borders. We used to collaborate to bring groups to Scotland on a regular basis. But because I was the youngster, I was 23 years of age, I had an ear that was attuned to spotting records when they were about to become number one, perhaps, in the then called Hit Parade. One of the records that I liked was a record called Love Me Do that came out about November 1962. And so I phoned Albert and suggested that we bring this group called the Beatles to Scotland for 10 days. And we booked them for 10 days in January 1963. And they played mostly Albert's venues. Went out pretty well in most places because they had a lot of humour. And the humour was evident even although we couldn't understand what they were saying. It was evident that they were a quirky band, their music was really interesting, the bass player was left-handed. All these strange things and they wore funny suits.
So we may as well enjoy it while we're young. We lift our hands and we reach for the sky and find ourselves forever wondering why we are living in the afterglow.
A lovely story I'd like to tell about Bridge of Allenborough Museum Hall, which was their last night. It wasn't well attended. We had 100 people there, but sadly 98 of them were young, drunk, young farmer males, and only 2 women. So there was a lot of trouble that night. And the Beatles, God bless them, they played through the trouble. They collected a lot of money, £3, 6 shillings or something in coins at the end of the event. And I remember thinking just how good it was of them to not walk off during this chaos. And they announced just before they finished at about 11:45 they were going to play 2 or 3 of the numbers that would be recorded in the future. And a friend of mine, Gordon Hardy from Aberdeen, we sat up on the balcony looking down at the Beatles and still watching this chaos. And they started. And the number that they played, I remember it's clearly now as I did then, 38 years ago. They said, this is record, soon to be out. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. And the effect on me was I was absolutely rooted to the spot. I could not move my back. Never heard any music like this before. It was unbelievable, unbelievable. And I turned to Gordon and I said, this group are going to be huge. On the Monday morning, Albert Benici and I flew to London to see Brian Epstein, because I'd said to Albert, we've got to get these boys back. We might even get them for £30 a night because we've lost money. We've got to get them back. They're going to be huge. So we sat in front of Brian Epstein, and Brian said, well, you've come to see me unannounced. How can I help you? Lovely words, how can I help you? He said, well, Brian, we want to help you because we know this is a good group and we'd like to promote them again, even although we lost money. But Brian, we can't pay them £40 a night. That was too much. We'll pay them £30 a night. And he looked at us and he said, you've come all the way from Scotland, first thing Monday morning, to talk to me about booking the Beatles. He said, I'll tell you what, he said. You can have the Beatles on 3 conditions. And the conditions are, it's not £30 a night. It's not. It's not £40 a night. It's not. It's £500 a night. Now at that time, the most money we had ever paid for a group was £100 a night. And it's like saying now, it's not £1,000 a night, it's not £2,000 a night, it's £20,000 a night. That was the difference. It was an easy decision for me to make because I didn't have much money, but it worried Albert a lot. Brian also said, it's not dances, it's concerts. I want them to do concerts. And I'd like them to come to Scotland to do concerts before they do concerts down here. And I believe that shortly after they left Dundee, their next appearance was on the Palladium. So Brian knew what he was doing in terms of getting them exposure. The third condition that he made was quite astounding. He said, you need to decide whether you want them before your bum lifts up off the seat. Oh my goodness. So Albert asked for a little bit of time with me, and Brian Epstein left the room. And Albert said, what do you think? And I said, they're going to be huge, Albert. They're going to be huge. We have to have them. And we got the Beatles for 6 nights in Scotland at £500 a night.
Unknown to me, Duncan McKenna, the promoter up here, he wasn't too impressed with the lads.
Beatles came back. The Beatles came back. I had an office in Gellertley Street at that time, above the Labour Exchange, on the 3rd floor, and we decided to sell the tickets for the Caird Hall from there. They went on sale late spring for the first concert, which was, I think, in the autumn. And the top price ticket was 60 pence now, and the bottom price ticket was 2 and 6, which is 12.5 pence. No one had ever filled the Caird Hall. Even Frank Sinatra hadn't filled the Caird Hall for 2 houses. Went on sale at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning. The same morning, 3 o'clock, I had a phone call from Dundee Police. Is that Andy Lothian? This is he. Andy, you get your butt down here to Galloway Street. There's 600 kids knocking hell out the Labour Exchange, wanting to buy tickets for the Beatles. You've got to open your office now. We opened the office, and when there were queues away down Galloway Street, we started to sell tickets, and we realised how huge it was going to be. I was also promoting with Albert the concert in Glasgow, and the tickets went on sale that morning also. So I phoned the box office, couldn't get through. I phoned my cousin, an architect in Glasgow, and asked him to go and see how the tickets were doing. An hour later he phoned me back. He said, pandemonium, he said. They're sold out. Both houses sold out in the morning. And that was the first concerts the Beatles had done, and no one had really understood what the Beatles would become. It was in Dundee, Kirkcaldy and Glasgow that the Beatles actually found themselves and discovered just the magic that was going to be so live forever.
They were very inquisitive. They were wanting to know about the artists that I'd played with and what they were like.
I was in seat I-12, balcony, front row. They came on and did Roll Over Beethoven, first number, and John Lennon spent the whole of the first number untangling a lead. He didn't play. Of course, George Harrison sang that. And Dougie Martin was actually on that bill with a band called Johnny Hudson's High Four.
Johnny Hudson and the High Four, they were a band that had signed with me. I was their agent, and they were extremely popular, not just in Dundee, because they were Dundee bands, they were very popular in Dundee. 4 extremely good-looking young guys, extremely talented vocalists, all of them, and wonderful musicians.
It was quite a shock when we arrived back from Hamburg, because they were the band in Hamburg at that time. And when we came back, we just got back in the morning, and Andy Lothian said to us, you're supporting the Beatles tonight. And we thought, goodness gracious.
The lineup was the Caravels, Malcolm Clark and the Cresters, Johnny Hudson's High Four, and the Beatles. And it was just tremendous. Very, very noisy. You couldn't make out very much.
By the time the second house was shut, the Glasgow police were saying to me, we've got to get this show started because they're knocking hell out the theatre. And in the balcony, the youngsters were beating their hands against the plaster, and the plaster was falling, and the police were really concerned. They said, you've got to start the show. And I had no bouncers. So I recruited 6 St John's Ambulance men. I recruited about 26 of the biggest guys that I could find, separated them from their loved ones, got them to come down to the front, and the show started. Albert and I had arranged for some of the local bands to do the first set, but even the local bands excited the imagination of the audience. But by the time the Beatles were due to come on, the bouncers hadn't turned up yet. And I remember, after about 5 minutes of trying to hold this motley group of big young fellas, St Andrew's Ambulance Brigade, a few St John's, the janitor, trying to keep all the girls back, just about going under for the 9th time, and out of the corner of my eye, my relief in seeing 24 drunken Dundee boxers all rushing to the front to save the day. It was like the Leaf of Arnhem. It was amazing.
When the Beatles were on, we were standing behind them, and Ringo's rostrum for the drums kept moving apart, and he had to keep jumping off and pushing it. So we had to help him forward all the time, push it forward. And then one particular time he jumped off his drums and his leg caught on an amplifier, and we had to catch him and put him back in his seat. You know?
It was fantastic. I was looking at the Beatles for once, wasn't looking at the girls.
The next morning I went down to when we were taking all the gear out and so on, and their roadie was back in the van. They just had a small van, and the last thing they put in was Paul McCartney's bass, and it wasn't even in a case or anything, and it was tape holding all the pickups on. You had it all just stuck on, you know. But apparently that went missing, and he's been looking for it ever since.
But I don't think they ever dreamt that they would be international like they were, and even change the music.
And I asked my manager, because I had another tour coming up in Scotland a few months later, and I asked for the Beatles, but they told me that, where were they? They went to Hamburg. And from there, It's old history.
Excellent. It's good. Yeah, you got a chance to meet lots of really big stars. Ray Charles, who's my hero, Bo Diddley, the original outfit. Lots of good people. It was good fun.
I said to John Lennon when I met him when they made it big, I said, do you still want to be my backing group? And he went.
Listen, guys. Mr. Chris Jones. Mr. Charles Rosenay. Let's get Charles out here. Mr. Mike Strafford. Let's get Mike out here. Yeah, let's hear from Mike.
Until the 60s, there was individualism was an individualist. There was not a group sound. So I think this huge energy that was sparked by the magic of the Beatles sat for a number of years. The Beatles split, that magic faded. And to recapture it, you have to revisit the period that it happened.
Well, it's a strange thing that the only band that's ever outsold the Beatles were the Beatles. You know, all the bands that are coming around, there's some great bands, but I don't know. It's for some people it's the first time around for them listening to the Beatles, even though it's 40 years on. It's fashion. At the time when the Beatles were the voice of youth. I'm reading the anthology book again, and when you read it, you realise just how much you missed, and you know how much they really were for young people, and for good. I mean, most of the songs are about love and peace and nice things. There's nothing that you could really take and distort.
Everyone I hang out with, all my friends, which are around my age, they all love the Beatles. And I guess it's the good music they sing, and it's their 4 different personalities all just put together that make them such an amazing group and just attracts people towards them. I think they're just beautiful people and they make such beautiful music.
There's a tremendous Beatles influence in bands today, particularly since the guitar band boom of the last 3 or 4 years.
I think because it stays with you. My parents that are in their late 70s love it. My kids love it. I mean, of course, I raised them on it, but they love it. And on this trip, there are kids from 18 years old to 60 years old. And but I was the prime age to just fall in love with them. I mean, I was 13.
To many people, the Beatles physically are dead, but the music goes on.
You start to realize that the main influence of those bands, or the bands that I like, are the Beatles. You listen to Oasis songs, you start thinking, you know, they're taking words from the Beatles, they're taking melodies from the Beatles, and it sounds great, but you might as well just go to the first where it initially came from.
The Beatles taught me more than school could ever teach me. I mean, they taught me about peace and love and getting along with people, and taught me everything about life I learned from the Beatles.
It speaks to the heart and soul of what's on people's minds. And they do it so simply and so beautifully that everybody can relate to it. I mean, most of their songs are only like 3 minutes long, but they're just packed with so much emotion and so much energy that I think that's why they're so timeless and transcend all generations.
For me, it's the 3 M's. It's the music, which is first and foremost, the be-all, the end-all of it. It's the memories for those who live through it, the nostalgia factor, and also for the fans discovering it and never had the opportunity to have those memories themselves. They were living it secondhand or thirdhand. And the third factor, the third M, is the magic, that X factor, which you can't quite put your finger on, which just elevated the Beatles beyond any other group that ever existed. People who saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan in the States will remember it not as a black and white television appearance, but as something that came alive in their living room.
Great success. It was really good to see all the older musicians and the younger musicians together. Everybody's had a great time, and big Dundee effort from everybody, and it's paid off, I think. I think next year will be really busy. It's definitely going to happen next year, but it'll be a one-day event at a convention and a one-day festival. But this time we'll bring Japanese and South American, we'll just really mix it. I think the Americans, once they go to London and they take it, and they've really enjoyed the hospitality of the Scottish people. They've loved that.
But I got to tell you, coming to Scotland has been wonderful.
They've been going to Liverpool for many years now, and this is just that little bit different. So they're going to go to Liverpool next year, and next week, I beg your pardon, and tell everybody, you know, that Dundee's the place to be next year.
It's been great. I've loved the weekend here.
I love this place so much. I love this whole trip. I've only been on it for like 3 days, and so far it's great.
It still amazes me, everybody I meet, new people, Americans, Scottish people, Japanese. It's just the one same ingredient. It must be happiness. I mean, music makes you happy, it makes you sad, it makes you want to dance, cry. It's the emotions, I suppose.
There was no hype, in fact. There was the magic of the music, just the wonder of the music. I can't recall any other music prior to that that had such an impact on the population. Everyone loved it. Everyone loved it. Despite the age difference, even the parents loved the music. So in 4 months, the Beatles had created a new music called the Beatles sound that just swept the country. So there was no hype. There was just this magic of the music that everyone suddenly caught into and touched the souls of everybody.